Welcome back, everyone, to Driving and Dragons. I'm Daniel, and this is yet another D&D Reacts video, the, reaction series of the channel where I react to other users' content here on the Tube of Use. Today, we are visiting Blaine Simple, who typically does, I think he actually typically does more animated content, but I'm pretty sure this one, judging by the paused opening, is going to be just voiceover of him playing some random video game. But the video is habits that always cause trouble. So he, of course, says D&D habits, but I'm pretty sure that those are going to apply equally across the TTRPG space. We're going to find out together. While you're here, like, share, subscribe, do all the fun stuff that YouTube likes you to do, hype the video. And remember that my Patreon and my YouTube memberships all go towards the purpose of building cars to give away to you guys. Anyway, we're going to jump right into it. These videos sometimes tend to get a little long just because of the start-stop kind of nature of them, but we're going to pull this up and see what we've got.
Quick mention that Silver's Monster Goal Manual, my dating guidebook filled with cute designs and quirky NPCs, is finally finished. Physical copies are available while supplies last using the link down below. Playing in restaurant.
Guys, I'm just going to go ahead and start off with this one. That looks like something that not only would I never buy, but I would hope would never sell. The last thing we need is more hentai, borderline, cutesy, come screw my monster nonsense out there. So there you go. Right off the bat, we're going to trash Blaine's product, which is something I generally try not to do. But seriously, cute monster dating book? No, that's kind of crap that needs to go away. So let's take a look here. First thing, playing in restaurants. I don't know if that's really a D&D habit, but let's hear what he has to say.
Please don't show up to play D&D in a restaurant without warning the staff first. So many things could pop up and become an issue that if you don't call ahead, odds are that a bunch of social taboos are going to be triggered and the restaurant is going to hate your party's guts afterwards. Since most people work weekdays, there's a high chance you'll randomly have the idea to play in a restaurant on a weekend, which will have your group walking straight into a super busy restaurant with server staff trying to keep pace and just flip tables. Since most D&D games tend to last a good 2 to 4 hours, you'll be there way longer than a typical guest. Plus, role-playing games can get pretty loud, and depending on the people in your party, things might get disruptive really quickly. And to top that all off, if you're in the US, the question then becomes how much you should tip to make up for the hassle. If anyone in your group brings up the idea to wander into a restaurant to start playing, and they haven't called ahead or made sure it's specifically a board game restaurant, then they should be nuked on the spot. Working with
Yeah, he's got a pretty good point there. And, forget the tipping side of things. All right, a waiter can just ignore your table. They can just ignore the party. And, heck, that's actually a pretty easy job for a waiter, just kind of around checking and making sure that people's drinks are full and not interrupting at the wrong times. It'd be pretty easy tips, for a pretty high table, at least as long as all the players are not being jerks about it. But you're eating up very valuable real estate for the restaurant. That's already a very low margin business. And you're basically taking up a table that needs to turn over several times, in a nice restaurant, which, they don't really track this near as much in like your Golden Corral as he has up there. But like in your nicer restaurants, they're open for dinner and they know that they need to turn their tables over 2 to 3 times in order for them to really be profitable. And if you're sitting there tying the thing up for several hours on end playing a role-playing game, you're damaging that business, and they're well within their rights to come up and just be like, hey, appreciate your business, but y'all need to pack up and get out of here. You bought 2 appetizers and 5 drinks that all have free refills, and you're tying up a 6-top for 4 or 5 hours. So, yeah, not to mention it's just kind of rude for you guys to be playing a loud, a game that can get kind of noisy and loud and whatnot while everybody else is trying to eat. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, this is not the appropriate place.
with the staff to make up a signal to help them know if and when to bother your group should also be a thing to work out. Otherwise, you risk them popping back over to refill your waters 100 times and ask if everything's alright enough times that they might as well become a recurring NPC. And even if you call ahead of time, I'd still warn against restaurant D&D because most people are so careful not to inconvenience anyone in the service industry that even if things seem to be fine, somebody in your party is going to get antsy and feel uncomfortable with breaking all these social norms. Libraries also fall under the same umbrella because if you play in a public part of the building, then you'll wind up disturbing anyone trying to quietly read. And at the end of the day, I'd still recommend just renting a table at a game store or just playing at home.
Okay, well, actually, it looks like that's good timing because it looks like we're about to have us an ad. But let's go ahead and talk about this one real quick. The libraries part at the back end is just kind of stupid. Let's go ahead and skip this. So the library part, when I look at the library part, what I see is a situation where it depends, because there's a lot of libraries that actually encourage role-playing games. They actually encourage people to come in and do these things. And a lot of this is just common sense and common courtesy. And trust me, I know that social ineptitude is just kind of goes hand in hand with especially Dungeons and Dragons, but with role-playing games, unfortunately. But the long and short of it is just read the room. Step in and take a look and realize, is this appropriate? Is this not appropriate? If you got somebody over there who's trying to study hard for the bar exam or is about to take the LSAT or something, you don't need to be hooting and hollering and, breaking the noise rules in the library. You need to go find a private room where you guys can sit in and play, which most libraries have. Or you need to get with the librarian and very simply set up like a public D&D time. The big thing about it is, though, with the library is, as a general rule, if you're playing in a library, you should really be open to other people coming and joining your table from out in the public. It's kind of a misuse of the public space for you to just go play D&D with your buddies and be like, no, y'all need to piss off. And, we're here in the middle of this public space doing this thing, but you're not welcome to participate, is kind of a jerk move. Well, let's see what this is. Newbies with Homebrew. This one's probably 1,000% correct. This is way more true for DMs than it is for players. Players with Homebrew, period, is bad. But let's see what he has to say.
With Homebrew. If you're new to tabletop role-playing games or D&D, then just ban Homebrew outright at your table. You're not skilled enough to even know the basic mechanics of D&D, so there's no shot you'll be able to properly understand whatever insanity your players might bring to the table. And who knows who the actual creators of that Homebrew were? Can you verify that they actually know how to play the game and make stuff that won't completely break it? There's so many ways to be creative with the materials in just the player's handbook. And if your group gives you issue with the newbie dungeon master asking to stick with it, then that says more about them than it does the game. Once you've seen like 80% of the mechanics of D&D play out during an actual game, maybe you can start to consider adding some in. But just ban it for your first handful of games. There's plenty of mistakes that might already happen that could dampen the fun. And introducing unknown elements of random homebrew people find online is just asking for trouble. Bribery.
Okay, so this is going to be one of those ones that we really have to focus on, something that Spurgs online have trouble with. Speaking purely in generalities is what you have to do in this kind of situation. He's pretty much correct. I mean, I do love that he actually focused on the GM factor of this, because here's the line. I don't care how well you know the game or what it is. Players should not be bringing homebrew, period. Homebrew is the game masters using Rule Zero to alter the game to fit their world and to fit their table and to fit the play style and the type of campaign that they're looking to run. It is not there for players to just, wish fulfillment inside the game. And you absolutely should know what you are doing before you do it. Now, he did use homebrew in a way that I don't particularly care for. The problem with the word homebrew is that it has a very, very broad definition. When you're talking about altering and changing game mechanics in a fundamental way, that kind of homebrew, he's 100% right. When you're talking about coming in and saying something along the lines of certain races don't exist in this world, certain classes don't exist in this world, certain kinds of magic don't interact with this world in a certain way, that kind of homebrew is okay right off the jump. Like that is simply you creating the world rather than playing in like a pre-made setting of some kind and exercising your authority to say, hey, halflings don't exist here. So that kind of homebrew, I don't care if this is your first time playing D&D or your first time playing a tabletop role-playing game. That kind of homebrew is always fine. But as a general rule of thumb, absolutely correct. You need to have played quite a bit. You need to have game mastered quite a bit, truly understood how the system works before you start changing it. And at the same time, players, absolutely not. So let's see what this bribery is. Hopefully it's not as stupid as it seems.
This shouldn't be a surprise, but don't bribe your dungeon master. And I guess if you're the DM, then don't accept bribes. It can be stuff like handing out cash, catering the party with food, massages with baby oil, or really anything. I don't know. It's nice when stuff gets offered out of the good graces of players' hearts, to make the game that everyone's there to play just a little more enjoyable. But when there's an expectation to divvy imaginary rewards out in exchange, that's when things become unbalanced and players start to resent the system. When I was younger and way more immature, I humored the idea for a bit, having friends treat me well in exchange for treating their characters even better the next time we'd play. But it turned D&D into less of a role-playing experience and more a flexing game for who sucked up to me enough to get their hands on the largest magical flaming sword. So yeah, don't humor that. Players.
All right, so this has got to be a more modern thing. I mean, I'm sure it had to have happened somewhere in the past. There has to have been some kind of situation where this is a problem. If you've got a player who's trying to manipulate the GM to get in-game benefits in that manner, that goes far more than don't accept bribes thing. That's kind of a get rid of that player situation. Generally speaking, if the game master is not bringing stuff to the table and everyone else is, that's kind of commonly accepted as, hey, he puts in all this extra time to give us a good game. So if he's eating off of the pizza and having the gummy worms and getting the chips and dip and drinking the beer, as long as he's not just abusing the situation or demanding it, then you're more or less fine. As a general rule of thumb, and this is not just a D&D thing. This isn't any social gathering thing. Unless it is something very specific and special. So, for instance, my wife can't drink caffeine. So if I'm bringing caffeine-free Coke to the party, that's there for her to drink because she has a special restriction, and I'm not putting that on the host or anybody else. But outside of something like that, if you're bringing something, it's like they used to say in school, did you bring enough for everyone? You should absolutely be bringing enough for everyone. If you're bringing food, drink, whatever to the D&D table, barring some kind of specialized restriction, you should be bringing it expecting to share. Do not be the asshole who shows up with his 12-inch Subway sub sandwich and sits down to eat. And that's the reason why he didn't pitch into any of the rest of the food, is because, I brought my McDonald's with me to feed myself so that I'm basically not participating with, the rest of the group. And that's not just a D&D thing, guys. That's when anytime you have a Super Bowl party or a World Series party or anything like that, you're watching the Stanley Cup, you've got the national championship game for NCAA football. You're going to watch the Grand Prix races for F1. When you have group gatherings where everybody's getting together to do that stuff, if you're bringing stuff, you need to bring stuff for everybody, unless it's kind of explicitly stated that that's not the way it's supposed to go and the host is having everything. Next one up, players missing sessions, apparently. This is definitely a D&D habit that is extremely vexing and incredibly annoying and is probably the number one thing to get people kicked out of groups or dismissed from groups. Though there are certain ways to work around it, but let's have a look-see and see what he has to say.
Missing sessions. For the most part, players really shouldn't be missing sessions, and if a majority of your group is calling off every time the game is meant to start, then that's a problem. But surprisingly, I'm not going to say that the solution is to talk some sense into them or beat the life out of them, but instead, wild take, but just play D&D less often. Obviously, the schedule is tough for players to regularly show up for, so instead of trying to perfectly fit the mold of the perfect D&D group needing to play once a week, play once a month instead. I'd love to play D&D once a week, in theory, but my schedule is all over the place nowadays, and I don't want to annoy any dungeon masters by being flaky. Recently, I joined a game that only plays once a month and has 5-hour sessions. It's not a lot of playtime, but you best believe that everyone's showing up for it. People feel like if they show up for a game one week, they have more runway to pretend they're tired and not show up for the next. Well, in a once-a-month game, the social pressure is turned up to 11. Like, if you can't make a game that happens once every 30 days, then you really are just not built to have friends. I don't know what else to say. But yeah, many of you are trying to put the round block into the square hole with this problem, and I'm getting tired talking about D&D with people only for the conversation to end by them saying their group got too busy to keep playing. Like, it's really getting embarrassing at this point.
Okay, so let's talk about players missing sessions. Oh, there's a lot wrong in this one. First off, he puts, play less often as kind of a catch-all. You can be play less often, or maybe have adult conversations about what times to play, what days work for everyone, figuring stuff out, putting it on the calendar, planning it out well in advance so people have planned for it ahead of time. The thing about it is that if you are a single player who is regularly missing sessions, there's a couple of things you can do. If you've got that core person who's been part of the group for a while, is a good friend and that sort of thing, a good DM can find a way to work around whether or not they're there. But as a general rule, if you're not making the sessions, you need to have the social awareness to say, guys, I've just got to bow out of the group. I wish I could play. I just can't seem to make it work. Everybody is playing on Saturday night, and Saturday nights just keep getting messed up for me. I just can't make them work. So I'm going to have to bow out because we can't play on Saturday. Sure, you could play less often, play once a month or whatever. But this whole idea of like, we're going to dial up the social pressure to make sure that they're showing up. It's like, no, just have adult conversations. That's a much better hot take than the one he has. His like, oh, wild take, play less often. It's like, wild take, have adult conversations and use Google Calendar. It's free. All right. And if somebody is consistently missing and is not going to inform the rest of the party when they are going to miss, they're always calling out the last day or something. Eventually, you just got to sit them down and have that conversation where it's like, hey, maybe this isn't the game for you. You really don't have time for this. We'd love having you around. Maybe come by for movie night if it's convenient for you. But Holden, we're going to need to replace you at the table because we need a regular player, somebody who's not, everybody else can make time in their schedule. You can't. This is clearly not important enough to you. So just trying to dial up social pressure to force a player and a non-player into being a player is not the solution. And the alternative solution, if it's like one of those key people who's always been part of it, maybe they're going through a rough patch in their life. Maybe they something came up, now they got to work 2 jobs or whatever, and they're just not as consistent as they were once able to be. Well, then the DM can take it on themselves to basically say, we're never going to count on this person being here. If they show up, they show up. If they don't, they don't. We're not going to do anything special about when they're gone or that sort of thing. We're going to just basically hand wave their absence. And if they're here, they're here. If they're not, they're not. But we're never going to plan on them being here. And that's really the way you handle it. So bringing homebrew without permission, I think this kind of goes right back to the other habit that we had before. That's honestly, these are not really habits, to be perfectly honest. These are just like, and they're not even really red flags. They're just bad ideas in general. I guess he had to figure out something to call his video. But this one right here, unless I miss my guess, is about players showing up with homebrew, which is always an explicit no-no. Always an explicit no-no. If you are a player who has some kind of homebrew thing that you think would be cool that you want to run past your DM, by all means say, hey, look, I thought this thing up. Maybe it's something you can work with. But you have to respect the fact that it's like, no, that doesn't fit my world. No, I don't like the way that works. No, it doesn't interact with other things I've got going on. You got to respect those things. But as a general rule of thumb, players should not be bringing homebrew. But let's see what he has to say.
Bringing homebrew without permission. Do I really need to spell this one out? Okay, so if anything has to do with Homebrew, then talk to your DM before you show up to the table with it. And I understand some websites online make it seem like the Homebrew they have listed is official, but just double check, because any self-respecting dungeon master is gonna shoot that down immediately. I remember a while back, before fairies were a playable race, I accidentally used one made by some random person on Reddit that introduced a ton of stupid broken mechanics just for tiny-sized characters. I wound up dual-wielding 2 8-inch daggers as an 8-inch tall fairy. Make that make sense. Multitasking. Some players are addicted to their phones and can't.
Okay, I just about missed that one. Multitasking, yeah, we're going to get into that. That's its own thing as well. He kind of hits the nail on the head. Don't bring Homebrew. Don't show up with Homebrew. And really, here's what it is. Here's what the correct way to handle this is as a player, because this is not really a game master thing. As a game master, you should be setting the precedent. You should be setting the standard and saying, look, these are the materials we're using. That's it. In this session, we are going to use 5e examples. We're going to use the player's handbook, and we're going to use Tasha's, and that's it. 3.5. We're going to use the base core rules. We're going to use expanded psionics handbook. We're going to use Stormwrecked. That's it. If it comes from another book, don't show up with Races of Stone. Don't show up with Complete Warrior or Complete Scoundrel or something like that. Don't show up with Sandstorm, because it's not one of the books that we explicitly said is going to be included. And certainly don't show up with something that somebody online made up.
Help but mindlessly scroll while calm moments in the game are taking place. Briefly checking your phone every once in a while is fine, but don't be that player who literally has no idea what's happening in the game anymore and has to be caught back up by everyone who is paying attention. It kills the magic of the game and makes everyone want to skin you alive. Adding phobia.
Okay, so yeah, multitasking is the wrong word. This is once again just a social awareness and rudeness thing that you, as a functional adult human being, should not need. There are some times where, yeah, you got to have your phone at the table. You know, there might be something happening at home. There might be some kind of emergency. You know, you might run a business and have to be at least somewhat available in case there's a problem. I'm not a big fan of the whole, oh, here's the phone basket. We all put our phones in the basket and nobody looks at a phone during playtime. We take, a break every hour or something where everybody can go check their phone. I'm not a big fan of that, mainly because I think that we should just be adults. But yeah, you should be paying attention to what's going on at the game. When game stuff is happening, don't have your side conversations. When the game is happening, don't be playing some game on your phone, watching some stupid video, distracting yourself, not know what's going on. You're already trying to, let's say that you're only playing 3 hours every other weekend or 4 hours every other weekend. All right. That's all the time you have. And you are going to waste precious time and minutes making a game master and players repeat themselves over and over and over again because you missed 3 words of a sentence because you were busy texting your girlfriend or goofing off on Discord or whatever the hell else you were doing. But once again, it's just basic manners. You don't do that at a dinner party. Don't do it at D&D. All right, adding phobias. This one's going to be fun. I think we all already know where I'm going to go with this one. The long and short is, if your phobias are such a massive problem, we'll use the classic one. If your arachnophobia is so terrible that somebody talking about a fantasy spider is going to send you into the shakes in the corner, what you really need is to not play fantasy games and go sit in a therapy session until you get your shit straight. All right. This is ridiculous. If you cannot handle the basic fantasy world, you got a problem. But let's see where he goes with this, because there are some situations where I think, there's some some stuff to be said about this.
If my DM started playing a YouTube video called Silence Occasionally Broken by the Unbearable Sound of a Buzzing Wasp, I'd shoot him in the face with a can of bug spray. Aside from my normal human fears, like doing taxes and trusting the autobelays at climbing gyms, I play D&D to enjoy a magical high fantasy adventure, and not to face my looming personal demons. Most of the time, this doesn't matter because nobody has any phobias that would even come up, but just keep in mind that the only one that has a solid chance of being seen are spiders, but like, just change them to scorpions or literally any other bug. It's not that hard.
Okay, so here we go. No, if you can't handle the spiders in game, then you got a serious problem. If for some reason there's something that is just just too uncomfortable for you, excuse yourself from the table. Right? Don't force the table to conform around you. Excuse yourself from the table. If it's really something that's bad or that's over the line, you think, approach the DM after the game and say, hey, look, I think that was a little out of line. I think you went a little too far. Okay? Simple as that. Game masters, however, if you know that you have somebody who is sensitive to something, don't ram it down their throats. Just, once again, common sense, common courtesy, common decency. Use your brain. Don't be an ass is rule -1. Just don't be an ass. Looks like we're going to talk about killing off characters next, which, spoiler alert, I have a feeling that this is not a bad habit. This is something that more of you people need to do more often, but let's find out.
Killing off characters. Okay, hot take, but one that I think more people need to finally be aware of. We're in a new age of D&D, and the 2024 edition has a type of general player base that prefers a much more cushioned gaming experience. Players now vastly prefer the story and role-playing in D&D now, and killing off characters, especially in anticlimactic ways like, I don't know, a random grizzly bear encounter, tends to piss people off. You need to have a session 0 so you can pick your players' brains if stuff like that's going to be an issue, especially if the plan is to run a very murdery game. And here's the worst part. Even if they agree to it, that might not even be the case. They could say that's totally fine, but then when death eventually happens, still get pissed off about it. I hate pistachio ice cream. Then why did you order it? It's gotten to the point in my games where I'll do literally anything except kill a player off unless they do something so stupid that there's literally no hope for them at that point. And then yeah, natural selection and all that. But stuff like terrible scars, missing limbs, fucked up magical glitches that cause them to shoot fireballs at themselves, I don't know. I'll do anything to keep it interesting and avoid the conversation of a new character being added to the party. And that's another thing.
All right. This just makes me think that Blaine Simple is a simply poor game master. This is idiotic. Okay. Yeah. The modern player a lot of times gets way too attached to their characters, way too whiny about it. And when it comes to like, oh, the random grizzly bear encounter is going to kill my character, that's where dice fudging actually has a place. That's where you start giving players an off-ramp to get the hell out of the situation so that they don't suffer that death unless they're incredibly stupid. But as a game master, you should not be avoiding killing characters. If there are no consequences in your game, then your game has no meaning. I don't care how much the players just want their character to be around forever and how attached they are and how upset they get when they die. Your game will fizzle and burn if your entire thing is avoiding killing characters. There is nothing has meaning if there's no fail state. And you can't take that away. You are doing your players a disservice by pussyfooting around and hand-holding and babying their character. And no, that's also not what session 0 is for. All right, it really isn't. Now, session 0 is where the game master might say, hey, look, just so we're all aware here, I'm not going to save your ass. It's not is everybody okay with your characters dying? It's this is what happens in this game conversation. And if they don't like it, they can go play at another table.
Characters being pushed into a group tends to suck. Your party gets so used to rolling around with the same group of people every session that when Newbie McGee shows up, nobody winds up caring about them. It takes a skilled DM to make character death and introducing new ones to the game not damage the cohesion of the party or the fun of the players. And I'm telling you right now that even I fear having to get involved with that whole process. It's not a, oh, you should always ban this moment. So technically this video is clickbait now and I scammed all of you, but like, you know what I mean, all right? We're moving on. Changing.
Yeah, that whole last section just makes me think that he really doesn't have any business running games for anybody. Not if you really want to have a seriously decent game. Everything he said pretty much was wrong. The way to handle everything was pretty much wrong. That's just a bad one. Looks like we're going to changing rules. Why are we going back to this? It's like this is the second time that the whole, homebrew thing has come up with just different wording. It's the same damn thing. It's just, I guess this is a more, and I did make this complaint myself, so I have to, address that minor hypocrisy there. That I did say one of my issues with homebrew is that it tends to mean everything. It's just too much of a blanket term these days. And this would be a specific kind of homebrew, but changing rules to fit the table is like a core element of being a good GM. Like that's what we do. Even the radical, crazy, raw-tard rules as written folks will tell you that, that this is how they try to waffle their way around Rule 0 existing, how they try to, have it both ways, is they'll tell you that, it has to do with, omitting something in situations where it's not viable, or, creating a rule that there isn't a rule for already. So let's just see what he has to have to say here.
Rules after agreeing on rules. A game is defined as a system of rules that everyone agrees on. So if the rules are constantly changing, then nobody will know what kind of game is being played anymore. Imagine you're playing tag with friends and then suddenly halfway through the game, one player decides to convince everyone else that if you get tagged, you have to reveal a deep, dark personal secret to the group. Nobody agreed to that originally, and sure, it'd make things way more interesting, but that was never the game we were playing. Everyone was playing tag 1 minute, and we're now being thrust into some kind of teenager slumber party nightmare social pressure game. If the DM makes a ruling, then that's just how it should be moving forward. The only exception is if they're just making up a rule to avoid ruining the immersion by wasting time fiddling with the rulebook. In D&D especially, certain changes to the rules can augment the entire game and make or break character concepts. If you massively...
All right, I think he's about to get into this. Yes, this is where knowing what you're doing before you change something really matters when it comes to fooling around with homebrew. It can vary change. Now, character concepts, your character concept should be a person in the world, not a set of numbers on the page. Your character sheet should be working to better support the character that you're playing in game, not the other way around. People do accuse 3.5 of this quite a bit, and will go to the grave saying that it's the misuse of the system. But this is where people have a problem with the term character build. Quit building your character on the character sheet. Build the character in the world and make the character sheet conform to that idea. That being said, here, do have to give him the little bit of the apology here, because he did go a different direction with the changing rules. You have to be consistent. That's all there is to it. You have to be consistent. You can't just randomly be changing rules and changing your rulings left and right all over the place. A world without any kind of verisimilitude, a world without that sense of realism, just like the characters not dying, that completely eliminates all the stakes. Nobody is happy for a success when they don't know if the success was just kind of the DM's whim or not. Like, how do I know if I need to get excited when somebody smashes the ball over the center field fence, if I don't know, if it's not always a home run, if sometimes it's a foul ball because an umpire just decided the center field is now foul? Now it's not exciting to watch baseball because the ball gets hit over the center field fence and it's like, do I jump up and celebrate because we just scored a run? Or am I like, oh, well, it's another strike?
buff critical hits in the game, then I might want to know that ahead of time so I can build a character who's good at taking advantage of it. Because, it'd suck to have to learn about that after the game begins just to find out I'm bringing a support spellcaster. DMs have plenty of chances to avoid farming bad faith from their party by just laying out the groundwork beforehand. But anyways, you can...
Well, guys, and we're going to get away from this. We're going to stop sharing because we don't need retarded monster girl book. Here's the thing on that last part, that last little bit he had there. Totally wrong mindset, but good piece of advice. The good piece of advice is exactly what you would think that good piece of advice would be. When you're a game master and you're going to change things, you should lay those changes out for the players in advance and you should stick to them. If you realize you made a mistake and you need to change them, you need to turn around and say, hey, I made a mistake and here's what I'm fixing. If you are a player, barring it being something that is intrinsic to the world that the game master has made a change explicitly to facilitate a feeling, a certain kind of genre feeling or something in the game, barring something like that, you should not be looking at it and be like, oh, he does this rule this way. I need to go find a way to exploit that and, find some way to break the game or manipulate this so that I can really get super powerful because of this rule change. I want to take full advantage of that. Let me dig into that is the absolute worst way to make a character. That is not how you do things. And this is why you see a lot of these players also getting bored with characters and ironically coming and saying, hey, DM, kill my character because I want to make a new one. I'm bored with this one because you made something that's nothing but a pile of stats on a page instead of an actual living, breathing person that you can empathize with and that you can express things through in the game. You made a walking calculator and for some reason, you find it weird that being able to type boobies on it, holding it upside down was only funny for like the first 5 seconds and now you're bored. But anyway, guys, that's what I got to say on this one. I'm not going to sit here and bash his product, but don't buy that crap. Encourage everything in the world to make cutesy, date the monster girl, somehow the slug princess is supposed to be a hottie nonsense. Get that crap out of the game. That's just so stupid. But anyway, this video, like I said, there's some pieces in there that were pretty decent. There was a little bit of good there. There was a lot of bad there and a lot of signs of a very immature GM. But you let me know what you thought down in the comment section below. See you guys next time.